but they're good numbers. We balance and we have a good fund balance. So if you'll please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do I have somebody here from the Chaplain Corps? I don't, so I'll give our blessing tonight. Dear Lord, we give thanks for this time of the year as Christians for Christmas and Jews completing our Hanukkah. We ask that you continue to bless us for the remainder of this year and the remainder of our lives. May we do your service and serve our residents in the way that is best for all of them. In your name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Makes a big difference already. Put it on so low.
Can the clerk take the roll, please?
Okay, Mr. Mayor, Councilman Templin.
Present.
Councilman Cisco.
Present.
Councilman DeGiulio.
Here.
Councilwoman Gavarecki.
Present.
Councilman Rourke.
Here.
Madam Pro Tem McLeod.
Here.
Treasurer Armstrong.
Present.
And Mayor Matakas.
Present.
We have a quorum, sir.
Thank you. I'll ask for a motion for approval of tonight's agenda.
Motion.
Support.
Councilman Cisco has moved. Councilman DeGiulio is supported. Is there any discussion, changes, correction?
Let's separate claims and accounts, Mayor.
Without objection, we'll take consent agenda A, purchasing actions, claims, and accounts, and separate those from, well, since it's the only item, we don't have to separate it from anything.
We just do it, huh?
All right. Any other matters? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's carried. Thank you. Need a motion for approval of the minutes for December 12th.
Motion.
Councilman Templin
Support.
has moved. Councilwoman Gavarecki has supported. Is there any discussion of this matter? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's carried. We are going to go into the presentation by Plante Moran at this time. Under the state law, we are required to file an audited statement of our financial affairs by December 31st, and so this audit is pursuant to that requirement of state law.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Good evening. My name is Bill Brickey with Plante Moran. With me is my associate, Justin Cobo, and we're here to talk about the audit for the year ended June 30, 2017. So hopefully you have in your packet really three separate deliverables. We have the financial statements, which is the large bound document, the graph presentation, which we'll go over in just a moment, and finally we have our report to Mayor and Council. So we have covered all of these documents in detail with management as well as Mayor and Council in study session. So we were just going to provide some brief comments here tonight. First of all, I want to make sure and thank Bob, Katie, Mark Kibbe, and your entire finance team. This was our first year doing your audit, and it can be quite a cumbersome process, especially the first time around, and they did a great job getting us everything we needed to complete the audit in an efficient manner. Our main deliverable to you as your auditors is our opinion on your financial statements. It's page 1 of the financial statements, and happy to report the city did receive an unmodified audit opinion in the current year, which basically means the financial statements are in compliance with all the rules and regulations. So what I thought you'd do is, before we get into the graph presentation, which really just summarizes some of the key financial information in the statements, I just want to point out a couple things. What you'll see in the graphs is, overall, the city was very fiscally responsible in the current year and basically stayed within budget in most departments. And overall, the city actually had a 2% positive budget variance in the current year, which is good to see. The city made all required pension contributions and all required debt payments in the current year, and also was able to contribute $500,000 to the Retiree Healthcare Trust Fund to help fund the unfunded retiree healthcare liability. So what I'd say is, overall, the audit went very well, and the city ended the year in good financial condition. So what I thought I'd do now is I'll have Justin come up and go through the graphs, and certainly if there's any questions or any additional information needed, we're happy to get into more detail.
Thank you, Bill. We're going to start off by just looking at the general fund. We'll specifically look at the general fund revenue on this first graph. As you'll see, we have two different columns. On the far left, we have the amended budget, and then we also have the actual on the far right. As Bill mentioned, the city was fiscally responsible, and from a high level, we budgeted to use $175,000 in fund balance in the current year, but overall, we did add $312,000 to the general fund balance. And so these next couple of graphs are really just going to walk through how we got there in the current year, and really just compares your amended budget to your actual results for the year ended June 30, 2017. I wanted to just mention a couple of items as you look at the components of your general fund revenue. Property taxes, this is your largest revenue source. This represents 52% of your general fund revenue. This is in line with your budgeted amounts within $4,000. Looking through the other components of your revenue, you'll note the biggest discrepancy was related to state sources, and this is a positive budget variance. And this related to the local community stabilization authority check that the city received in the current year. This is a result of the state setting up an authority to reimburse the city for lost personal property taxes, and the city received about $915,000 in the current year. Overall, I think everything else was on budget. I think it is important to note that 70% of your total revenue is between state sources and your property taxes, for which this is a pretty known number. And so as we'll note on the following graph, the city is fiscally responsible and spends your money as budgeted. The next graph, this looks at the general fund expenditures. As I mentioned earlier, or Bill mentioned earlier, we were about $300,000 under budget, or 2 or 3% under what we had originally budgeted, which supports that majority of our departments were under budget and fiscally responsible. There really hasn't been, to our knowledge, a significant shift in your costs, but really what this shows is for each different function, we're spending as budgeted, and I think that's the key tool here. You're using your budget as a tool, and you're really following that. This next graph, this just shows how we're spending our money in the general fund. It breaks out the different functions, such as public safety, which this is our police and fire. This represents about 41% of our general fund expenditures, and our second largest is our general government. This comprises of several different departments, such as finance, treasury, assessing, clerk, administration, and this would look relatively consistent with how it was in the previous year if you were to compare those. In closing, I just wanted to summarize what the city's general fund, or the general fund balance was as of June 30, 2017. You'll see that at the top, our total fund balance is $7.6 million. I want to just explain the different components of it. Unassigned fund balance, this represents the resources available to the general fund at June 30, 2017. This represents 18% of the general fund expenditures, and this is an adequate level. This is necessary to fund our current operations. It's essentially the working capital of the general fund, and this is just necessary from a cash flow perspective to pay your current liabilities and also to pay employee costs. Assigned fund balance, this is essentially management's plan for how we're going to spend it. This has been set aside for capital projects. Restricted fund balance, this is money set aside for future debt service. And then non-spendable fund balance, this is money that's already been set aside, and it's essentially a prepaid or it's inventory. So the cash has already been spent, but we will benefit from that in the future. That's all I had from a graph perspective, but I think we're going to wrap it up with Bill having some closing comments on the end of audit letter.
Thanks, Justin. So we did have our end of audit letter. I wasn't planning on going through that in detail tonight. We did cover that before this. I think in general, as we look through the graphs, and this being our first time as your auditors, I think in general, certainly the city has taken some great steps in the last few years to, I guess, right the ship and get the budget in order. From an audit perspective, everything that we identified in the current year, management was very receptive to changes. and making corrective action plans for some of the minor items that we found. And I think on balance, you know, good audit, and the city is in good financial condition. I think going forward, the biggest challenge is going to continue to be how to fund legacy costs, and that's really not just an Allen Park issue, but that's a across the United States issue for a lot of local governments. Your pension system is well funded. You're about 77% funded there, which is better than most. Most pensions throughout the state of Michigan are 60 to 70% funded. But I think the real challenge is going to be the retiree health care liability, which is, again, depending on how you measure it, could be, you know, $800 to $100 million. You know, the city has started to fund that by putting some funds aside each year, but certainly that's going to continue to be something that you need to address going forward. So with that, that was all of our prepared comments. Certainly if there's any additional questions, we'd be happy to take those.
Council have any additional questions of our auditors?
Okay, Mayor. I'll ask a couple of questions. One of them is, how does this here property impact our audit? You know, owing, we're $18 million behind from what we bought it for and what we sold it for.
So from an audit perspective, our main responsibility is to make sure that the debt that you do owe is properly accounted for on the books and records, and it is. I think the results of that are, if you looked at the government-wide financial statements, you would see that basically you're in a position where, you know, your transaction there, you're kind of underwater, and so you're going to be digging out of that hole as you make those debt service payments going forward. But from an audit perspective, I guess my main responsibility is to make sure that everything that happened is properly recorded, and I can absolutely say that it is properly reflected in the financial statements.
Okay, and another question here I see during your audit, you identified a separate bank account that the DDA, the Downtown Development Authority, has. What is going to be done about that? I understand a $90,000 check from the state of Michigan was deposited in that. Should that have been deposited in that account?
So we certainly did identify that as part of the audit. We identified there were separate accounts outside of the city for the DDA. We worked with both the DDA and city management to get our arms around what is that bank account, what it's used for, how much is in there. And one of our primary suggestions is that, and all of that activity was reported in the financial statements, but we absolutely recommend that the city work with the DDA so that that activity going forward is appropriately accounted for on a periodic basis in the general ledger of the city, since that's the official record. And so we've talked about that, and I think there's going to be a plan going forward to do that, but that was an audit issue in the current year as we found this activity outside of the normal bank accounts that were recorded by the city for the DDA.
So the $90,000 should not have been deposited in the DDA account, or it was okay to deposit it there?
Well, I would say based on the previous activities of the DDA, it was unusual that it was deposited in that side bank account. Most of the activity in the DDA specific bank account that's held outside of the city was really related to special events, putting in, you know, beer sales and all the kind of activities they do in there. So that was an unusual item to be recorded in there.
How did that money from the state happen to go to the DDA?
I do not know the answer to that, sir. All I know is in our audit, we were able to identify this account existed. And then once we knew it existed, we got all the detail, did all of our audit work, and made sure that the activity ultimately got recorded in there. And the main reason for one of our findings is to say, you know, there should be controls in place so this cannot happen. And so we've made some suggestions to management to alleviate that concern going forward. But it would be unusual for there to be accounts that the city would not be aware of.
And we were not aware of it, I'm assuming, correct?
To my knowledge, you were not.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for council? Well, I want to thank Mr. Bricky and Mr. Colbow, and I would take a motion from council to accept and file the 2016-17 audit.
Support, Mayor.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem McLeod and supported by Councilman DiGiulio. Is there any further discussion by council? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's carried. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good holiday. go to public hearing for the Community Development Block Grant.
Do you want me to go ahead and give it a...
Yeah, you want to give your report on?
Yeah. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The purpose of this public hearing is to receive comment on the objectives and possible uses for developing projects or suggestions for other projects using CDBG program year 2018 funding. We did advertise this in the News Herald on December 6th, getting the proper notification for the residents to be aware of it. And the amount that we are reflected to receive is somewhere around $136,170 with an estimated $3,000 in program income. Based on the potential projects, we've listed public improvements at $95,820, public and senior services $7,350, administration at $13,000, housing rehabilitation at $20,000, and then housing rehabilitation program income $1,000, demolition program income $1,000, and public improvements program income $1,000. We list the program income amounts as an effort to if their threshold isn't very high, and we need to transfer some money, we can do so without having to do another public hearing. This will accomplish that public hearing as long as we're within a threshold that's not too high that the county doesn't have an issue with. We usually go through them to find out. So, and this will be the first of 2 public hearings. The second public hearing is scheduled for January 23rd.
Okay. I'm going to open this matter for public hearing. Is there any citizens that wish to come forward and comment on the block grant program for 2018?
Thank you, Your Honor. Dennis Hayes, Carter Avenue. The percentage for administration is around 10%, it seems, from the numbers you read off. Is that correct, Mr. Kibbe?
Correct.
And how is that actually utilized? I mean, we all understand that there's costs associated with paperwork and such, but when you got a minimal amount of money to start with, 120,000 or so, and you're taking a full 10% for somebody to sign off on some documents, I wonder if it'd be better, or is that required that we apply the percentage?
Yeah, we're limited to 10% as the administration allocation. It's administration or planning. Typically, that would be used to offset any of my salary or anything if we hire a consultant or anything, which we do not. For the past 2 years, we've actually not used that funding for administration. We've actually transferred it back into the program and used it for the street improvements project. And I'm thinking that's going to be probably we'll do the same again this year. But I want to make sure we have that ability to have it for administration if necessary.
Council have any questions of the city administrator? Any other people wish to come forward? Am I correct in understanding that this is a supplemental amount?
This is actually our annual allocation for program year 2018. We have mentioned in the past couple of meetings that there's a possibility of getting some supplemental money through the recaptured funds. That meeting was canceled last Thursday, which is going to make for a very tight time frame if we are approved for the that work. As you recall, April 30th is the deadline. That will not move. So we'll know in early January if we're going to be awarded that money based on how much they recapture. And they be in Wayne County Community Development Block Grant Program.
There are no citizens that wish to come forward. I'm going to close the public hearing. To the clerk, do I need to have a vote of council?
I don't believe so.
I can just close and we will move to the next item on our agenda, which is the city administrator's operational report.
I've been doing public hearings for block grant for 20 years now. I think Mr. Hayes may be one of the few that actually get to come up to the podium. So we have maybe 24 people total in 20 years. So thank you. Sometimes we have nobody, so that's good. Just a reminder as we're coming into the Christmas season, if you do have a real Christmas tree, if you put it out in your trash after the holiday, for the following 2 weeks, they'll Advanced Disposal will be picking those up. They'll be doing a special pickup just for Christmas trees. I'll also post it up on the Facebook page with the official dates, and we'll get that in the website as well if there's any change on that. But typically, it's the 2 weeks following the Christmas holiday. Last week, the administration submitted documents to participate in the 2020 census. The local update of census addresses operation, which is they refer to as the LUCA. And this is used to verify that the Census Bureau has the complete and accurate address list for each living quarter and associated population within our community. Yesterday, Bob Keating and myself, we sat down with the Census Bureau representative, and we went over some ideas that they had, discussed various ways that we can help get promote the word out that the Census 2020 is coming along, that we need to make sure that our residents are getting out, getting that information submitted back for the census, and everybody's counted. We need every resident counted. They're going to be doing the short form. Everybody gets the short form now. I think if you remember in the 2010 and the 2000, some people got a long form, kind of a lot more detailed information. They're not doing that anymore. It's all short form. And they're going to be doing various ways that you can submit that. Your typical mail, the snail mail process, no offense to postal workers. They'll also be doing an internet-based and a phone-based. They're going to be heavy in the social media. As they know, that's one of the best ways to communicate the news out to the public. So Census 2020, Census Day is April 1st, 2020, and I hate to think that it's 2.5 years away or less. So we got to start thinking about that now. Sat down with Bob Keating, myself, Tom Murray, Matt Doreen, Sohail Sebek, Bruce Hammond. We've been working with them, with Sohail and Bruce Hammond from CE Rains for the last few weeks, a couple months, going over the possible roads for the 2018 street improvement millage work. And I have those list of streets now. There'll be, and we've also had to look at the budget. Mr. Keating's been very tight on that budget with us this year, as opposed to previous years. So, but really tight, really tight. McLean Avenue, Allen Road to Park Avenue will also be replacing the water main on this street. Park Avenue, Leslie Avenue to Wick Road, and Colonial Court, Andrews Avenue to the cul-de-sac, and that also gets a water main replacement. When we went through and we asked the public for the millage approval and did our presentations, I know a lot of council members had mentioned, are we going to take into consideration the infrastructure under the roads, which is we already take care of the storm sewers along the road edge. In some cases, water mains are in that same area. So that has to be taken into consideration each time we look at the roads. McLean and Colonial Court. Colonial Court basically goes almost right down the middle of the road, and it's an older line that we've not had a little bit of problem with, not too much. McLean we've had a little bit of problem with, not too much, knock on wood. So those are going to be replaced, because as soon as you go in and you start banging the concrete to break it, you're going inevitably do something to those water mains down the road. It may not be tomorrow, it may not be next week, it may not be next month, but eventually you're going to see a break. And the last thing we want to do is tear up a brand new road. So those two streets will get new water main. Park Avenue is back off towards closer to the sidewalk on that roadway, so we're not at a concern for there. So McLean Avenue, Allen Road to Park Avenue, Leslie Avenue to Wick Road, and Colonial Court, Andrews Avenue to the cul-de-sac. For the City Hall and Police Department project, the contractor is working today. I've seen him out there working on the exterior brick walls of the City Hall portion of the addition on the front of the building. They need a few days of warm weather, so I think they got it today. They may get it tomorrow, and then it's going to be a little sketchy after that. If they can get that, they'll get all that wrapped up and be able to get the roof onto that portion. They've already installed the roof on the police department side, which is, you're looking at the building, will be the right-hand side. So the detective bureau and the officer in charge area, that has the roof on it. The decking's already been installed as well, and they're moving along on that side fairly well. While they had the weather issues, they moved inside. They completed the construction of the evidence area and the partial wall for the arsenal area. And then I think it was Monday, they completed the wall that makes up the exterior or the interior side of the jail cells. So we are one step closer to having jail cells over there as well, finally. Not that I want to see anybody here being a member to utilize them at all. No, maybe a couple people. No, just kidding, nobody. The roof contractor continues to work on the new roof, and the job site superintendent is hopeful that they'll be ready to start hanging drywall next week. depending on how they get the roof done, and they can go from there, make sure everything's dry inside. And then SMEA's been on site, and they've been hanging their wire racks. If they're not able to hang their wire rack for their wire trays, they've been able to hang the hangers in so they can be ready to go and get that all wrapped up for their communication lines. And then just finally, wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Hard to believe 2018 is coming along. That was just for your information.
I will ask that we put a motion before the council to accept and file the updates and reports. Moved by
Support.
Councilman Rourke, supported by Councilwoman Gavrecki. Are there any questions?
I have one question.
Councilman Cisco?
Yeah, I'd like to know, at one time, police and fire overtime had to be approved. Is that still happening, or are we not doing that anymore?
I think that's one of the things we've gotten away from, but it sounds like you requested that we get back to that.
I don't know if I requested it or not, but I'd like to know, if it's not happening, obviously, I think we need to take a look at that.
And I can work with the chiefs on that and get a
Thank
process
you.
in place.
I think before it was the emergency manager that insisted that, but I don't know that before that. I don't know if Councilman Rourke or Councilwoman Gavrecki, who had been on councils prior to
Well, there
these.
was always a process to monitor it, and Mark is working on a report sooner or later that we can review as to how much, why, when, reasons for it. Because I agree with Harry that somebody should be approving something.
Any other questions? I just have one. I was looking at the building, and at the front, on the side, it looks like there's a door that goes right over to the Subway shop.
I have no idea what I have no idea.
Is that in your office or my office? I was trying to figure that out.
Yes, that is actually that's the hallway that leads out through the administration between your office and the Bob's office down the administration.
Okay.
I hate to use any comparison to Subway because that guy's in prison right now. So but that'll get us over to ACO a lot quicker.
Okay.
Ace,
I
Fairlex Ace.
have one more question.
Councilman Cisco.
Yes, as far as the Nexel goes, is that fully operational right now?
It is.
It is, and who's administering that?
The PD normally sends those out.
Do they have a person, or is it a committee of people that do it, since obviously there's some working, some not working, depending on how that works, right?
I'm going to yield to the chief on this one.
So, in regards to the snowstorm the other day, the first message that came out with the weather advisory, that's forwarded through the Nixle system. The system is set up to automatically send out a Nixle message when there's a weather advisory. The one regarding the snow emergency was sent out by myself. Basically, you can almost have an unlimited number of users on this system. So when we first put it into place, I had basically sent out invitations to all of the department heads and then gave them a link to the training on how that they can put out messages as well, including some of my senior staff. So there's plenty of people in the city that have access to the Nexel system, but in regards to the messages that came out, one was automated for the snow emergency, and the snow emergency was actually done by me, but the weather bulletin was actually done by the Weather Service.
So are there uses for the Nexel that is not approved? Can any message be put on there?
Well, they basically have three different levels of messaging. They have an alert, which is the highest, which would be, like tornado warnings or maybe a tanker overturned or something like that. They have advisory messages, which would kind of be maybe more along the lines of what I sent out. But they also have community messages. So when I put it out to everybody, they could use it as a community announcement for an event at the library or events at the rec center, or I think maybe DDA has it too. So if there's a DDA event, they could send out Nixle messages as well. I haven't seen a lot of utilization of it, I'll be, honest with you, but,
That's kind of why I'm asking.
right. I mean, we use it as more so as an emergency thing, because we don't, we're not hosting a lot of events. But
And the other question is, okay, so I'm getting like tons of messages from Dearborn on Nexel. Is that supposed to happen that way?
if you signed up for that city, you must have signed up to
Whatever
get
whatever I
alerts.
signed up for was,
Well, just
The
to
link.
interject, several years ago, before we had Nixle, somehow something came up for Dearborn, so I plunked on that, so I get both of them. I haven't quite figured out how to divorce
Get rid of
myself
it?
from Dearborn.
well, and the point is, when, at some point when you were here and there was a link or something to go to for Nexel, that's the one I went to, that I thought was for Allen Park. And immediately I started getting messages from Dearborn.
Right, I'm signed up for Allen Park and only Allen Park, and I received no Dearborn messages
So I get
whatsoever.
Allen Park and Dearborn, unless I signed up for Dearborn many years ago, which I've never gotten messages before,
If you go
until
back-
I signed up for Allen Park.
If you
Maybe go back and check your profile, your Nexel profile, and see, because I know when I looked on there, I had Melvin, my mom was living there, so I had to just take that one off. So maybe that.
If you signed up years ago, when Stefan was here and it was launched, you automatically got the two cities. Because I haven't re-signed up in probably a decade almost, and I've been always getting Dearborn, so maybe you signed up a while ago.
Yeah, there may be something in the programming for look at your selected cities, and there may be a way for you to
Yeah.
opt out.
Yeah,
But that's unusual.
and I'll go look at it, but I remember you or somebody else, I can't remember, I'm sorry, but go sign up, here's the link, and that's what I did, and I started immediately getting Dearborn. So I will go back and look at my profile, but I think at this point, Mr. Kibbe, sorry,
Maybe one day.
one day, but you'd have to move here, though. Sorry,
Maybe one day.
hopefully,
Sooner than later.
I've been
you
looking
might
for
think,
houses
so
for you.
I need a condo,
and Bob. All right.
condo version.
I think we should just utilize that system more. I mean, that's why we did it, that's why we paid the extra money, and I think it is being underutilized. I mean, even for the, I could be wrong about this, but when we had the lighted Christmas parade, there was no mention of it, that streets were closed or that it was happening. And maybe it's just a thing where so many department heads are involved that somebody's figuring that somebody else is doing it. So I think we need some kind of more of a comprehensive type of policy on what's important, what's not important, and what should be put on there, and what department heads are responsible, and just make it a policy. Thank you.
It is very user-friendly. I think a lot of it is people are intimidated.
Give me
by
the link, I'll use it.
By the technology,
But yeah.
Oh, no, I'm not signing up for it.
I need a few more people to approve that up here. That's something we could talk about. But it is very easy to use, and even crafting an alert versus an advisory, there's, they'll give you
Right.
examples and tell you whether
It's a
this-
great tool.
Right.
Specifically, an example, when the bomb threat was at the school, and I thought that might have been a good application for it at that point, to let everybody know that everything's okay, don't worry, blah, 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 because I think it happened fairly immediately, that it was discovered that it was just, a bogus threat. Rather than have somebody go on Facebook and say, oh, everybody's, freaking out. I think that something reassuring, and I did get a message from you also, so I appreciate that, but I think at some point, that's a tool that could be used, citywide for everything, and calm the waters, so to speak, of what's going on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chief, one question. Do we know how many residents have signed up for it, or does Nexel give us that?
I would have to log in, because I think there may be something on there that shows how many people have signed up, but I'd have to look around on it
All right.
to see. But I'm pretty sure there is, so I should be able to give you a number.
Okay, thanks.
The last number I saw was only like in the single thousands.
Okay, so it's,
You know, maybe 5 or 6 is gonna be my guesstimation.
we need to have a push to have residents.
Well,
being
you know, to
But
be
that's
honest with you,
not-
we
that's
reach,
not
you know,
good.
we have a lot of methods that we use to reach the public, and, you know, to be honest with you, our Facebook seems to be getting way more traction as far as people getting alerts through that.
Sure.
But
Okay.
just whatever people, you know, their preferences, so.
Thank you, Chief.
We have the motion before the council. Are there any other questions from the city administrator at this time? For the minutes? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's carried. Before I ask for the motion, I'll just go through quickly. The Historical Commission has 2 members that are,
No, he's still in
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, never mind.
don't confuse me. I keep thinking about my Christmas presents. It's very hard to concentrate these days. Anyway, Historical Commission has 2 people who have asked to have their terms renewed to 2022, Barb Ferencz and Nancy Knick. Parks and Rec, again, 3 terms to be renewed through 2020, Doug Shepard, who is the chair of that commission, James Perry and Brad Cruts, and then the Housing Commission, which only has 5 members, but has Robert Draper's term for renewal is 2022. So I'd ask for a motion to appoint all of those people back.
Motion, support,
Mayor
Mayor.
Pro Tem McLeod has moved, supported by Councilman DiGiulio. Is there any questions?
Just one. I'm not sure on the Parks and Rec Commission if you indicated their terms ended in 2020, or did you say that in both of them? I don't know.
Theirs was 2020, yes.
Right, I just didn't know when you,
Oh, yeah, all 3 of them are,
20, okay, I wasn't sure, so I just making it clear. Thank you.
sure.
I might have missed it.
Any other questions? Hearing now, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That is carried. We're at the public comment portion, and I would ask people to look at the rules of decorum on the back of the agendas, and please abide by those with your comments and questions. And at this time, anyone wishing to come forward and address the council, please do.
Jennifer Kibbe, Director of the Allen Park Downtown Development Authority. Just wanted to clear up any misunderstandings about the extra account. The Allen Park Board, DDA Board, established that account at least 8 years ago when you were on the board, Mr. Giulio. We report every cent on our monthly financial statements, which are provided to the city through the mayor. This is the first time the account, which has existed, as I said, at least 8 years, has ever come up on an audit. And we are happy, I've reached out to Bob already, to provide whatever kinds of reporting that they need to help with the audit. This is the first time it's come up. In terms of the local community stabilization check, every year the reimbursement has been provided in a different format. Last year, one of the checks, if you remember, it went to Melvindale. It was a strange thing, and somebody died, and we ended up with the check in our hand, which had never happened before. I had deposited in the PNC account because it's, quite frankly, easier to do that. I certainly won't do that again. It was entirely my mistake. But please understand that there's absolutely no misappropriation of funds, that every cent is accounted for, and we'll be happy to work with the city in whatever they need for their financial reporting.
I understand $7,000 of that 90,000 was spent, is that correct? Approximately.
It's all local community stabilization reimbursement that would have gone to the Comerica Fund, the city's fund, and then come to the DDA to be spent. I mean, it's money to be spent. It's our personal property reimbursement. So once the money goes in, I can't say that that's a LSC dollar and this is a Made in Michigan dollar. As it was stated, the account was set up by the board to help with special events money coming in, and a lot of times we need to pay bills quicker than the city CDR process allows.
Was this money coming in, this 90,000, Where'd that come from? It came from the state of
It came from the
Michigan, I know.
state. It's part of our local community stabilization reimbursement. This year, we received almost $400,000 in local community stabilization. Comes in the form of 2 payments, one from the Melvindale School District and one from the Allen Park School District. That was the Melvindale one.
So you would have still took the
Point of order.
$7,000, right? You would have still took the,
Just let her finish and then we'll.
Thank
I
you.
thought she'd finished.
No, I don't
I don't think
so.
she
Let her-
finished. She's up here speaking and
Are you
she's.
are you still talking?
Councilman, I'll conduct the meeting, please. Finish your remarks and then we'll take questions.
I just want to make sure that everyone understands that this is entirely on the up and up. And we were surprised that this account we've been very forthright with this account for the entire time it's existed. And we will do whatever it needs to do to make the city feel comfortable with it. That's it.
Are you finished?
Yes.
Okay, now.
Any questions? Harry?
Well, I didn't know this was a question and
I
answer
didn't either.
period
That's why
either,
I-
so
Well, she mentioned my name.
it's
That's,
citizens' comments. Ms.
Right.
Kibbe has come up and made her comments, and that should be the end of it.
except she mentioned my name.
Doesn't matter if she mentioned your name. Mention my name.
I can respond then. if
Well,
you
that was
mention my
8
name.
years ago, just about when this came up. We had a point of order, I think you're right. It's unusual, though, to have a director come and address the council in this manner. I would just point that
Understood.
out. So,
I won't ask you anymore.
Are we good?
It's said.
Merry Christmas, Director.
Merry Christmas to you as well.
Thanks for the encouragement, Mr. Kibbe. This is Dennis Hayes again. I wanted to ask about, I see on the Nixle alert that the chief referred to that was issued 6 days and 6 hours ago. It said, a snow emergency has been declared effective 3 p.m. on 12/13 until 3 p.m. on 12. Parking on city streets is prohibited. Now, I don't want to beat a dead horse, which this seems to be, because we don't seem to have any mechanism to enforce a prohibition. In this case, parking. In other cases, leaves on a street. In other cases, building violations. I don't know what the aversion is to enforcement. I'd asked Mr. Kibbe by email, I don't know if he got it or not, I sent two requests, I haven't heard anything back, to know how many tickets were issued, how many cars were towed, because I guarantee you, in certain cities nearby us, if you leave your car in a snow emergency, your car will be towed away. And at a minimum, they should be given a warning and preferably a ticket, because ignorance of the law is no excuse. But I don't want to, I would like to see this council come back and maybe give us a report, how many people were ticketed, if any. I'm sure one or two were, but from what I read on Facebook, there were hundreds of cars during that 3 to 3 period on the streets. And that's not helpful for our city. We have narrow streets in some neighborhoods, and they can't hardly get down them on a good day, but to have them blocked on both sides oftentimes, it's impossible. But I wanted to ask about the, I see we made a $500,000 contribution to the retiree trust fund for the outstanding legacy costs. I am aware that we also have a lawsuit which we just succeeded in getting a dismissal on, but will maybe be appealed, I don't know. We owe a great deal of money to this retiree benefit legacy, as I understand it. I think he said $1 million maybe. We got a $500,000 payment this year. I don't know where that came from, but are we going to be giving a $500,000 a year from going forward, or what is the amount we have to do to satisfy this? Yes.
I think they said at our meeting there, the auditors estimated 100 million.
Oh,
But
100
in their
million.
audit statement, you'll see plus or minus 1% that it appears in the audited statements that we're somewhere closer to, I think, 47 million, which is still a huge amount, but
Yeah, it'd take us 50 years or so, or no, 100 years at this rate to get there. But anyway, so I guess, I wonder how that plays into the litigation that might go forward, because I know a lot of people out there, you know, I mean, our retirees believe that they had a deal, they had a contract, yeah, you know, the court apparently didn't agree, maybe an appeals court will agree. And again, I don't know what's going to end up, but that's an awful lot of money. And I said it's encouraging that we're 77% funded in our pension, which is nice, but it's not 100% funded, which would be what we'd want to be, hopefully. 110% would be the ideal. So we have problems with that legacy, the pension legacy, and we have humongous problems with the healthcare legacy. So I'm just concerned about that. The other final question would be, since the fund balance appears to be $7.6 million, and we've been spending an awful lot of money this year on trucks to replace trucks and to buy new equipment, stuff like that. And at one time, of course, there's many taxpayers, including myself, who wonder whatever happened to the rebate of the police and fire millage if we ever get on our feet again. What is the number that we have to be at before we see some trickle back tax money to our accounts? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor. I just want to respond to the question that came up about whether or not the police were enforcing the no parking during the snow emergency. I know that when I came in the following morning, now you have to understand when a snow emergency is declared, the residents have 4 hours to move their vehicles from the time it's declared. So we can start enforcement at 7 p.m. if it was declared at 3 p.m. in the afternoon. And when I came in the next morning at 8 a.m., the officers on the overnight shift had written over 77 violations to cars that were parked on the streets. So I know Mr. Hayes indicated that it was all over Facebook, and as Abraham Lincoln once said, if you saw it on Facebook, it must be true. But the police are not afraid to enforce the law, and I would have to guess, because I didn't get the following day's tally, but I would think that we ended up at somewhere over 100 violations issued. So we're not afraid to enforce the law, as was indicated. We were out there doing our job, plus our regular job of policing the city. Thanks.
Any other citizens wish to come forward at this time? I'll close the public comment period and go to a motion for claims and accounts, please.
Motion.
Councilman DeGiulio has moved. Do I have a support?
Support.
Supported by Councilman Templin. Questions, Councilman DeGiulio, as to your motion?
Yes, with your permission and Ms. Gavarecki's, I'll speak. I have just one question here on the $10,000. A little bit over $10,000 that was spent for a labor attorney, Seacrest Wardle. And it says services for Allen Park employee retirement. What's that about? Spent $10,000 there.
Yeah, if I may through the chair, that is the retiree healthcare lawsuit. Seacrest Wardle is Denny Pollard, who represents the city on that case. I think last week I happily gave you a document that said that case had been dismissed. And tonight I give you a sheet that tells you that Mr. Porter has filed an appeal on that result.
Okay, there's a
handout for that one.
There's a new lawsuit, correct? I mean, the appeal.
He's not a new lawsuit. He's appealing the.
That one? But
he's appealing the decision to both the decision to dismiss the case against the city, and also the case against Joyce Parker.
Okay, but is there a lawsuit that's going on that's just one individual will benefit from?
Yeah, that is that same case. That is the Pillar versus City of Allen Park case.
So he will be the only person that benefits from this lawsuit?
That I don't know.
Well, that's what I understand, that if it's.
Yeah, I believe he's the only.
It's one person will benefit
yeah.
from that lawsuit, I understand that. So, I guess we'll just leave it at that. We're still being sued, and we've already spent $10,000. We've spent, what, $285,000 on this lawsuit?
Yeah, I think the last update I gave you was a couple, back in November. I think we were at 275 at that point, so add another 10.
Another $10,000, $285,000 we spent on that lawsuit. Okay, thank you very much.
Any other questions by council? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That's carried. I'll need a motion to put before the council an authorization for Tom Murray, Director of Public Service and Engineering, to sign the 2018 MDOT annual right-of-way permit on behalf of the city.
Motion, Mayor.
Councilman DeGiulio has moved. Do I have-
Support.
Councilwoman Gavarecki has supported. City Administrator, want to explain to the public and maybe to the council and myself what it is?
This is the permit that authorizes the city to do any work within the MDOT right-of-way, which would be along 90, anywhere along 94 and along the Southfield Freeway. I don't believe they have any, I-75 as well, for the little portion they have there. But any work that is in that right-of-way has to be approved, and this permit will now allow that.
Any questions by council? Hearing none, I'll ask for the vote. All in favor signify by aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. That's carried. We're at other business. Any comments by council this evening? Councilman DeGiulio.
Just make it a short one. These guys really did a job while the snow was going on. They were all out there in the road. They plowed my street, some on other streets, I saw them salting and plowing, and I just want to commend them and their supervisors for a great job done. Good night.
Councilman Rourke.
Okay. Just a couple things to wrap up the year. We had a couple anniversaries this year that we really didn't pay a lot of attention to. St. Francis Cabrini with their 70th anniversary of being here, and also the city of Allen Park. We tried discussing this probably back in February, March, April, with our 90th anniversary. So it was 60 from being a village, 90 now being a city. So hopefully when we move into our new city hall, we could have some recognition. I don't want to wait 10 more years to the 100th anniversary of this city, and the new mayor and council back then finally recognizes it. So, you know, the citizens here deserve some of that recognition for being here for a long time. And kind of what Angelo had mentioned too, be patient with the roads. I said it last time, get the cars off the street. So the plowers, we have some new people learning the ropes, and we want to make it helpful for them to do that. Also, was also brought up that once they come by with that plow, don't be going with the snow blower and throwing it back in the street again. You know, if you can, I know someone called me, or somebody said, yeah, somebody came by twice, told me don't do it. So I said, then don't do it. I mean, we're trying to keep it clean, and, you know, they'll come back again and they'll clean it up again, they'll salt it again. And I know, because I called them quite a few times saying, how we doing, how we doing, how we doing? So if you have a concern, talk to one of us, and we'll try to follow up with them as well. So Merry Christmas, have a safe New Year's, and see you next year. Thank you.
Councilman Templin.
I'd just like to wish everybody happy holidays and a happy new year, and thanks for coming tonight.
Councilman Cisco.
Yes, just like to all my Christian friends, Merry Christmas. To all my other non-Christian friends, happy holidays. Enjoy the holidays as best as you can. And remember that we have a lot to be thankful for here in the city of Allen Park. We're on the right path to getting things done. You can see progress everywhere. And that is a joint effort, not only by government, but also by the Allen Park citizens that participate. And so, and just one little thing for the students, don't forget to vote. You get a chance to vote, always vote. Never fail, always vote. Thank you.
Councilwoman Gavarecki.
Thank you, Matt. Just want to thank everyone for coming out this evening. Wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and look forward to what next year has to bring for all of us, so thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem McLeod.
Yeah, I was giving some thought to this as I was doing a number of things today. We always say, well, we're at the end of the year. We all wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And many times we make resolutions for the new year, most of which are never kept. The thought crossed my mind that if all we do as individuals is just try and be a little bit better parent, a little bit better spouse, a little bit better friend, a little bit better neighbor, a little bit better citizen. It might go a long way in our lives and our community. And so I'm wishing you the standard Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and hoping that you'll just be a little bit better. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and this is the last night for gifts for Hanukkah, so it was very nice. I think the Mayor Pro Tem gave the mayor and rest of the councilmen a gift, not necessarily for Hanukkah, but it is the last night for gifts. There is 8 days to Hanukkah, and I wish all the Jewish people in the community again a happy Hanukkah, and to all our Christian residents and friends, Merry Christmas, and to everyone a Happy New Year, and I think we'll look forward to January 9th as the next council meeting. And with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
If I could, before you close the meeting.
Yes, I'm sorry. Treasurer.
I just want to make an announcement. Because we no longer have a financial institution within the city that allows our residents or taxpayers to go in and pay the taxes, we are required by law to stay open late one night in December, and that will be Thursday, the 28th. The treasurer's office will be open until 5 o'clock to collect taxes. So with that, have a Merry Christmas.
The clerk?
I just want to say a quick thing about the roads being plowed. Yes, they got plowed. However, during that plowing, any cold patch that was in there was probably knocked out. So the roads are going to be in a little bit shoddy condition because everything they put in over the summer could be knocked out. Now, I don't know if there's enough time to go pour enough of it, but please expect that. So, but wait till it snows and ices and that pothole will be gone until summer. So just be mindful of that. Also, I'd like to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, Happy New Year, and thank you all for coming out. God bless you and good night.
Just before I take that motion, I just want to make the announcement, City Hall will be closed on Christmas Day and also on the 26th of December. Will be closed New Year's Day and also the Tuesday following the New Year's Day. And with that, a motion to adjourn, please.
Well, the hockey game.
Councilman Rourke. Support? Mayor Pro Tem McLeod, all in favor, signify by aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned for the year, folks.